Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to the Weekend Wellness Hour show. Today, we are interviewing Larry Stefanow, who is the husband of Kelly Baker, who we had on last week. And she was talking about colonics, drainage. And so we wanted to bring on Larry this week to talk about a different type of drainage modality called lymphatic enhancement therapy. So I welcome Larry. Thank you so much for joining us today.
And thanks for having me.
This is great. So I know you and your wife have a detox wellness center in Gilbert, Arizona. So you see people in person, and this type of lymphatic enhancement therapy, I understand, is an in-person treatment. But how did you even get into this type of therapy, or this, all these different certifications that you have? You have a list of them, if you wouldn't mind sharing on that.
So, as you had Kelly on last week, our journey all began about 12 years ago. More with my son, being diagnosed with autism, and that kind of cleaning up our, eating habits and stuff, because nutrition was a huge player in the game for him. But more so beyond his autism was Kelly getting sick herself. And then me having to pick up the slack at home, taking care of him, taking care of her. She was at one point, bedridden, just basically wouldn't do nothing but sleep on the couch all day. And I was working, I ran a construction company. So my primary business is general contracting, not health and wellness. However, 12 years later, though, I've already surpassed a college, education of health and wellness. But basically, I've been all in it with her. We were in it to figure out what was wrong with her. Because after going through doctor after doctor, and for years and spending, honestly, because I'm a guy, I keep tally on my tab. I was well over $200,000 invested into her health, and getting nowhere. Led to our frustration of her figuring out basically that she had Lyme disease on her own. And so then even after figuring it out, we had to figure out how to fix it. And of course, there wasn't a whole lot of literature out there about it at the time, 12 years ago. It's a lot more understood today than it was then. So I basically just have been along for the ride with her. And, of course, as she was learning, I was learning, because she talks with me about everything that she's doing and why and what. And I just retain information very well. So I just, as I continue learning over the course of time, got better at it than most. And when it came to especially nutrition, because I picked up the slack on cooking at home, and we started going special diet. We're all gluten-free, dairy-free, egg-free, soy-free, basically everything free, but how do we still eat good and taste delicious? Fast forward now to about 5 years ago, we started Restore Detox. That came about because back in the day, I think Kelly told you, she started doing colon hydrotherapy, and doing colonics, because a doctor told her to do it. And when she realized how much it helped her tremendously, that person she was seeing was like, you're a book of knowledge, you know so much, you can help so many people, you should be a colon hydrotherapist. And she's like, I'm not doing that. That sounds like a horrible job. And after about a year, I told her, I was like, maybe you should. And, it's not, not a bad thing to get into. It's just not, you could help a lot of people. And I told her, I said, if you're going to do it, I'll do it with you. I said, we'll do the class together, because you had to have like 3 college credits of physiology and anatomy. I said, we'll do online courses. I said, we'll go out to Santa Monica to do the training. And if we're going out anyway, I might as well do it with you. So I became a colon hydrotherapist and a general contractor. So got picked on quite a bit at the office when my guys were like, you're doing what? I was like, well, I'm not doing it. I said, I'm just certified in it. And so with that, we started a business actually out of the house. We bought a machine, because you couldn't even buy the machine unless you were certified. They won't sell it to you. So I bought the machine, and since we had it, we bought it for ourselves, really. And since we had it, we're like, well, maybe offer it to public. And, she saw like, say, 10 people on a regular that would come in. And we did that for about close to a year, until she decided that, she wanted to one day have a wellness center. She's like, I would love to, help people. And so we moved into the current location we're at now, but we're only taking up a small portion in the back of the house. We had 3 rooms. One was a massage therapist, one was colon hydrotherapy, and then one was a longevity ozone sauna. And so she could handle the business, and I was doing my business, and she did hers. And I didn't even work with her at the time. But we ended up getting a Hocket ozone sauna. And I think she kind of touched base on that last week a little bit about the Hocket, and it's a little bit more sophisticated and stuff. And I'm a little bit more, we're a good match because she's great with nutrition. She's great when it comes to disease and problems and how to treat and all that. I'm great with anatomy, and I'm great when it comes to science, like the science-based items. And so the Hocket was easy for me. I figured it out and stuff, but she's like, but you need to run it now because I can't do it. And I'm like, but I have a business to run. And she's like, I don't care. I need your help. So I started working with her about 3 days a week, running a Hocket ozone sauna, and just found a natural knack for it. So I became that would be more the title of the Hocket ozone specialist. I got to the point where even Hocket themselves started hiring me to train people, in other states and that as they sold them. So I would travel and train people and help with that because I got in with Hocket back when they just started in the US. So that kind of got me into this end of things with her. Fast forward again, I would say about maybe 2 years into the business. I was having a lot of problems with people rashing out when they were doing ozone because of detox, and so as I like to do a lot of research. I don't like to just, blindly process people or just not care. I want answers. And so I started doing a lot of research and learning more about drainage. And that the reason that people were rashing is because you can't just detox. You have to drain. You have to get the toxins out of the body. If you don't drain, you can't detox, or you're just going to reabsorb the stuff that we're trying to get rid of in the first place.
Right.
And so, So as we got more into that, it was kind of like the universe talking, things coming into line. A lady had called us who was doing this lymphatic treatments, and she wanted to come do a session on Kelly to show her what she did and to see if she could maybe work here, on the side doing this. And she had a machine called the Right Way at the time. And she came into the session. It was interesting to watch because it was all over the place and kind of a hot mess. However, it was teaching that we need to start worrying about lymphatic and moving the lymph system, which intrigued me to do further investigating. So as I did, I came across LymphStar. And so LymphStar was another machine, just like the Right Way, but I like the product a little bit better. We found a machine on eBay or something for sale. It was an older one. We said, let's give it a try. So we bought it. We actually trained one of our employees to do it first. Wasn't really seeing the results that we wanted to out of that. So then another employee came along. We bought a better machine, a LymphStar Profusion, because it has these fit modalities, these additional heads and things you can use. And so actually, Kelly and this lady did the training for that to operate it. I still was just doing Hocket only and stuff. And, and I could do colon hydrotherapy if needed as a secondary. But the lady that was doing it was doing good, but she went on vacation. And when she was gone, some of the people coming in were like, well, I wanted to get a lymph session. So Kelly's like, well, Larry could probably do it because I sat in on the training. I didn't actually officially even do the training yet. I just sat in on it. So I observed. And she asked me and I said, I could probably do it. And so I performed a session. Well, they loved it. The session went well and they got great results from it and stuff. So then the next lady is like, could you do mine? I'm like, why not? So before you know it, by the time the lady came back from vacation, I already saw like 6 people and they all wanted to reschedule with me. So next thing you know, I became the lymphatic person and the rest was pretty much history. So I've been doing lymphatic for over 3 years now. But I'm always continuing my education with it. I still am not settled with just, process. I can't just sell a service and say, come in, it'll make you feel better, because it will, but I want to know why. What am I doing? What's the change? How can I make it better? What things we affect in the body by doing this, and continuing on. I can say today, from when I started to today, my sessions definitely are way more involved and a lot more productive. But that's because of all the studying that I've done over time and understanding the system. And so today, I would say the topic more so than lymphatic enhancement therapy would be just drainage. Lymphatic enhancement therapy is really just one modality that we need to exercise to help increase our drainage. But drainage and overall, honestly, is the beginning point of all health. I mean, if you don't drain, you're not going to be a healthy person. If you're sick, it doesn't matter what it is, cancer to Lyme disease to, anything, fibromyalgia, you name it. Drainage is the starting point for all detox for all health. And until you start draining, then you might as well just stay home. You're not gonna get better. You will not find health without drainage first.
Right. And do you mind going into the lymphatic system a little bit, because drainage is important for
Absolutely.
that?
Yes.
And I think it would be good to give people an idea, like, why even care about the lymphatic system.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So lymphatic system, the simple end of it is it's primarily the sewer system of the body. So it's just, honestly, it's just as important as your cardiovascular system. The blood, our capillaries secrete fluid, plasma, which becomes interstitial fluid. Interstitial fluid is basically all the fluid in the body. 60% of our body is water. That water gets contaminated, because what it does is it provides oxygen and nutrients to the cells in an interstitium, but it also is what carries toxins away from the cells to keep them clean and healthy and so reparative. And then that toxic load of interstitial fluid absorbs into the lymphatic system. Lymphatic system is throughout the whole body. Primary thing, you have duct, deep vessel, and you have capillaries, just like cardiovascular system, except it's not a closed system. It's a one direction open system. So as we absorb that fluid into the lymphatic system, it becomes lymph fluid. Lymph fluid then flows from everywhere in the body, ending primarily up in your terminus, which is up at the collarbone, which is where it dumps in the subclavian vein. So all toxic load, all lymph fluid eventually makes it back to the blood, back to your cardiovascular system. But in that travel, it goes through lymph nodes. We have over 600 lymph nodes in the body, which most people don't know that. We think there are a few lymph nodes here or there, but there's over 600. We need all 600. A lot of people, doctors like, oh, it's swollen, cut it out. We don't need it. We got more. But they're filters. What they do is it's little filters that as the fluid flows through that little filter, it pulls the toxic load out to the side and puts them in these little pockets, and it brings in macrophages. Macrophages are white blood cells. White blood cells destroy the pathogen and then process it through to keep us healthy. So as we're dumping that lymph fluid back into our blood, it's cleaned and not, toxic, contaminated. However, it still is a toxic load, but consider it like a deactivated toxic load at that point. So without the lymphatic system, we'll just be sick. It's our first defense of the immune system, basically. And it's what keeps, I like to always break things down like automotive, because people can resonate with that easier. If you were to continually just change your oil in your car, but you never change the oil filter, the engine will blow up. Right. So consider the oil filter is your lymphatic system. The engine oil is their blood, basically, or interstitial fluids and stuff. And so we want that oil to stay clean, just so that it doesn't get debris and break down the engine. We want the interstitial fluid to be clean so it doesn't break down our cell. And so it's that important. And if in congestion, the lymph is bad these days. And again, to touch on like what Kelly talked about last week, detox, our environment today is just getting more hostile than ever. Chemicals. I mean, just from the time you leave your house, we're already breathing in carbon monoxide. I always go back to 1950, our parents, when they were kids and stuff, there was there's about a tenth of the amount of cars on the road as there is today. There's, even though there was harsh chemicals and everybody smoked around everybody because, cigarettes were healthy for you at that time. It's still, you didn't have that toxic load we're, subjected to like we are today. There's more chemicals. There's more chemicals in the foods we eat. There's more chemicals in everything we do. And just toxic load that the body was designed to take care of it and filter it out through the lymph system, but not at this level. We're not changing fast enough with the environment. We're at a point now where technology is changing our environment faster than our body can adapt. And so we can use technology though to bring the body up along with it, but we can't rely on natural resources to do it anymore. And so that's where we get into the lymphatic enhancement therapy, is to help to decongest that lymph, to keep it clean, keep the body functioning, more appropriately, and to try to maintain homeostasis, and so I can kind of go into, like the lymphatic enhancement therapy and like the machine I use and like what it's about.
Yeah, because some people may be familiar with lymphedema, when your one arm swells after you've had, say, a cancer. So you've had cancer, maybe you've had a lymph node removed, it's called a sentinel lymph node, and then your extremity swells significantly. And so you go through lymphatic drainage, which is different than lymphatic enhancement therapy. So we can go through what your therapy is, so that way people can understand there is a complete difference between the two.
So imagine your lymph system is like the highway system in the United States, right? You talk about lymphedema. When I tell people lymphedema is California highways. It's basically, because you have lymph nodes removed. Let's say, especially with mastectomy, a lady has breast cancer. She gets a mastectomy. They go in to pull the breast tissue out. And they go, oh, well, there was a bunch of swollen lymph nodes in your axillary, in your armpit, which is a primary drainage spot, which is where the breast drains to. And of course, it's going to be swollen. You're processing an infection. You're processing cancer. That's what it's doing, is this job. A swollen lymph node is only swollen because it's full of macrophages, white blood cells. It's your immune system trying to fight off the pathogen. So to take it out is the dumbest thing I've ever heard, because could it be infected with something bad that could cause harm? Possibly, but it's doing its job. But when we take those out, we're cutting off those highways. We're cutting off that path. And so now interstitial fluid is going to go through interstitial fluid is in any space is in interstitium. Interstitium is any space between cells. So from the skin to an organ, any of that space is fluid filled. And so it fills up down the arm or around muscle and so on. So fluid fills up in the arm. We rely on the lymph system to absorb that fluid and then to process back up and dump back into the cardiovascular system. But, and it does that because there's backflow preventers built in to help push it along the right direction and get it out. But when you cut those pathways off, nothing can absorb, nothing can process through. And so we just fill up, and no way to process it out, because like I said, it's like the California highways. It's congested and there's no getting through it because it's completely blocked off. So with lymphatic enhancement therapy, we use a machine called the LymphStar Aria. It's this machine that uses frequencies, basically, where you have two wands with glass heads on the end, and then the glass heads, there's about 5 different noble gases, and so electrically charged creates a negative ionic field. Okay. So what negative ions do is negative ions will help to push fluid away. The best way to put it is, you see like the glass balls where it has like the gases inside, and you put your finger on it, it like looks like it's shocking your finger, and you can take your finger around the ball, and it's like that has that natural gases in it, and so that's what noble gases. The noble gases will cause that reaction, and then or if you put your hand on the sphere to make your hair stand up, like static electricity, kind of the same concept. That static will cause any kind of a congestion to break down on a molecular level, or breaks down so that it thins it and helps it move away. And any fluid that's within that realm of that is going to push. It's going to push away from it. And so when you use the wand over the skin, as we rake it up along the skin, you're pushing that fluid in the direction we want it to go. And so we're just using, instead of manual manipulation, which, people understand in lymphatic massage, which is basically the weight of a dime, people pressing very lightly on the skin, they say it causes a peristalsis in the lymphatic system by pumping action. But problem is that these days, most people carry such heavy congestion in the axillary and armpits, inguinals, which is down on the inner thigh, which is all reproductive goes to. And with that heavy congestion, pressing on it doesn't move it. It's like trying to, move jelly through. It's like sludge. So we need to utilize these negative ions to break that congestion down. And then the machine also has different fit heads. It's a laser. There's a laser that with using the laser, so it's like red light therapy, blue light therapy, basically, but more of a higher intensity with nanos. And when that red light hits the cells, it causes them to get a radical and they break up. And so it really breaks down that congestion, and then the wands can move it along. There's another fit head called the Eclipse, which does a red light therapy, blue light therapy, and near infrared. So this one, the near infrared, is going to help to draw out from the deep tissue, or near is more for skin, but draws from the tissue. Blue light calls an immune response in, and the red light will help to destroy the pathogen. So we draw it, destroy it, and then mop it up, with a healthy cells. So it's just a whole process, basically, with lymphatic enhancement therapy of opening up the end of the line first. So, we're opening up the terminus, opening up the axillaries, opening up the inguinals, and getting all the body to basically filter out. And it's tremendous. I mean, the results that we get are, I could give you, 100 stories of people that come to us that, have seen every specialist in the world, and for 10 years have been sick as a dog and not getting better. And in one session of lymphatic, they're coming back going, I have not felt this good in the last 10 years. I have a new lady that started last week, and she's doing better. Her husband, she's doing better than she's done in 10 years. And it was because of drainage, because you can't keep putting stuff in the body and never taking anything back out. It doesn't matter if it's good stuff or bad stuff. You could put good vitamins, good food, good herbs, anything into the body, but if you can't absorb it, number one, and if you can't process it through the body, it's a waste.
Yeah. And so now when they come and do this, I have many questions, but first is when they come and do this and have a response, what does that response look like? Does it mean they're going to urinate more? What's the immediate response, if there's any, or a week of response later? What does that look like?
I'd say that, of course, I'd say 90% of what I see is women, 10% men. So going down the path of women, we'll talk about hormones a little bit and stuff.
Sure.
The response, even after the first session, you'll see a big reduction in inflammation in the body, because by increasing drainage, and especially the laser, completely wipes out inflammation. Now, of course, sometimes temporary is going to be, because if we're not fixing the root cause or changing the problem, I call this life support. I'm just helping the body do what it naturally should do, but it's not going to fix it. You have to fix what's causing it in the first place to maintain. But what we do see is a reduction in inflammation, a lot less puffiness, reduction, so a lot less swelling, a lot less fluid buildup. Like when people say, well, I'm retaining so much fluid, sure, you'll have increased urination because you're going to be processing a lot of that fluid that was just stuck stagnant in the interstitium. You're going to process it now through the bladder, through the kidneys and stuff. I've seen people increase peristalsis when it comes to, going to the bathroom and stuff like that. So intestinal operation can increase. Hormones is the biggest thing. Again, 90% of my women that are coming in have hormone problems, and it's not. We always are looking at hormone production, and if you test for your hormones, you're looking at levels of hormones. Well, I'm high in estrogen or I'm low in progesterone, and so on and so forth. But we don't ever address distribution. Nobody talks about distribution. Even the hormone doctors don't talk about distribution. If you're producing the proper levels of hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone in the ovaries, but your ovaries are congested and your inguinals are super congested, which I'd say is pretty much 85% to 90% of every woman that goes across the table, then you're not getting distribution of hormones. Your estrogen is going to travel through the interstitium. It's going to travel through the interstitial fluids, and it's going to go to the places it needs to, and it's going to be received into the organs and whatnot as a transmitter. But progesterone is a non-polar hormone that uses the lymphatic system. And so progesterone's job is to regulate estrogen, right? So if we have estrogen dominance, you need progesterone to regulate it, to say, nope, you don't need that much here. You need this much here. But if progesterone can't get to it, what do we have? High estrogen and hormonal issues and imbalances in the brain and everything else, and people going crazy. And so that's the biggest thing you see a change in immediately, is that, and I work on even kids, young girls going through puberty, 13 years old, and their mom's going, she's going crazy. She's driving me crazy. She's crying one minute and she's yelling at me the next minute. And I go, bring her in. And then she does one session and she's like, she's a different kid. I don't even recognize her anymore. And it's because these kids are coming out the gates congested because of the environment they're living in and the foods that they're eating and that they grew up on, and just the junk. And so we get ahead of time, and it's like a whole different world, So I would say that's going to be the biggest thing that most people see, is the hormone, kind of plateauing a little bit and leveling out and making them feel better that way. If you do just lymphatic, if you just open a drainage and you don't do any detox like a Hocket or anything afterwards, majority of people, for 24 to 36 hours, it's going to take your body 24 to 36 hours to process the stuff we're dumping in that subclavian vein. Because now we're waiting for the circulatory system to go and pump through the liver, lungs, kidney, skin, and colon, and to take the toxic load and push it out of the body. Fatigue, flu-like symptoms, possibly things that, they may be like a little down and out. If you do a Hocket afterwards, which that's the majority of people, you do lymph, because then when we're dumping all that stuff into the blood, the Hocket puts ozone in the blood, which then will help to deplete a lot of that toxic load. They come out feeling great. Then they don't have that Herx reaction. They don't have to feel bad. They feel great. So that's why that combination is perfect.
Yeah. So when someone's going through the lymphatic enhancement therapy, how long is that process? And you said you start kind of right under the collarbones and then go to the armpit and then the groin area, right?
Yeah.
Those three areas.
It's 75 minutes a session. Most people for a first session, I'm upwards of an hour and a half because it's a little bit longer. I love teaching. As you see, I talk my brains out. But when I'm working on people, they have my undivided attention for 75 minutes. We talk about their health, and we get involved into where I like to teach more about lymph and why we do what we do. But you start with opening up the terminus first. So you're dumping the subclavian vein right above the collarbone, but the subclavian vein is right below the collarbone. So we're going to start swiping right here, swiping right here. We'll drain the head first by opening up the cervical nodes around the ears, draining down the neck. Just so it keeps from pressure buildup, because when you're laying flat and you start moving all this, it can build up in the head. So I drain that first, then I go back and drain this again. And then we go back to working the arms and then the axillary. So armpits are super important, especially for breast health and everything else as well too. You got to be draining there. Then we work down to our torso, where we're raking everything from the gut. Then we want to rake it all out to the watershed, which is in our sides. So up along the obliques and the sides is a watershed. The watershed is double ending points of the lymphatic capillaries. So we have ending points starting here, wrapping up, and starting here, wrapping around our back. So by dragging that interstitial fluid to the side, we're helping to absorb more of that fluid and then process it to the axillary. And then you go down to, so anything from the navel up, all the right side drains to the right axillary above the navel. All the left side drains to the left axillary above the navel. Anything below the navel, all drains to the inguinals. Inguinals start on the inner thigh, about midway up, and they go up over the hip flexors, come together above the navel, and they go through a little sac called the cisterna chyli. It's like this, I consider like a little expansion tank. That's usually fills up with a lot of lipid proteins from the gut and stuff like that. And then it goes up the thoracic duct. That's the main duct, comes up behind the sternum, and then dumps into the left side. So 2/3 lymph dumps into the left side, 1/3 of the lymph dumps to the right side. And so then from the feet up and all that too, all the legs drain into the inguinals as well too. So especially anybody that like feels heavy in their legs all the time, experiences a lot of tightness and pain in their hip flexors, and that's inguinal congestion causing that. And of course we can get into reproductive system, which is atrocious. There's a million things I can keep you on the phone for 4 hours in this topic, but maybe another time. But there's a lot of things that go on with the reproductive system when you're talking ovaries, uterus, anything down even to the vulva and stuff. More recently, I'm getting more involved into even the perineum. I will share this story just because it's kind of funny how things come to me and came up. Last night, this commercial was on last night, and it was a commercial for a drug for people that have low blood sugar issues. Mm-hmm. And at the end, they always say could cause nausea, vomiting, headaches, death, whatever. But one of the things it kept saying was, it says can cause infection of the skin of the perineum. And I kept hearing this, and I look at Kel and I say, why the heck would you get an infection in your perineum? Now, just so everybody knows what the perineum is, that's that little bit of skin between the anus and the vagina, or the man's testicles. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, it's such an odd spot. That's, to me, it's like saying, I'm going to get an infection right here on my arm. Because I'm thinking, like, why would you get an infection in this one particular spot? Mm-hmm. But this is where women carry so much congestion. And so as I did more investigating into it, come to find out, it's actually a very major drainage point in the pelvis area. So pretty much all vulva in that, and drains down to the perineum, and then anything from the anus and that drains up to the perineum, and the perineum drains out to the inguinals. And so it's a very heavily congested spot. And I learned more too, that a lot of women that carry even more congestion in the inguinals than not, either have babies and have either had an episiotomy or tore during childbirth, which causes scar tissue buildup in the perineum. And then that scar tissue causes this congestion, and now they don't drain, and it's causing, and why this is important is it's leading to congestion in the cervix, the uterus, the ovaries, which is increasing the chances for cervical cancers, uterine cancers, ovarian cancers. Breast cancer, we would all agree, is the number one cancer with women, right? And why? Because of drainage. It's because women wear bras. You wear bras from the time you start developing when you're younger to your whole life. And bras cut off clear across here because it wraps around tight on you. And then you have underwire, which wraps around the sides. Well, the breast drains clearly out the side into the axillary, but this underwire is cutting it off, and it's not letting the breast drain the entire day you have it on. And when you're cutting across here, it's cutting off from a liver and everything else draining. Or most women go, well, I wear sports bras all the time. Even worse, you're suppressing the breast tissue because they're meant to hold everything in place. And so nothing's draining out. And so breast congestion is far worse in women than anything. And it's because of the bras. And so it allows for fibrocystic breast tissue, fibroids to form. Many women nowadays, back in the day, they say do breast exam, circles, feel for lumps. if you were feeling the lumps, everybody'd be going to the doctor to get checked right away, because I'd say at least 75% of women have lumps in their breast now because of fibrocystic tissue, because of the congestion. And so that's where anywhere in the body with congestion is opportunities for cancer.
So, okay, so obviously physical restrictions, like you mentioned, clothing can do that. What are some other reasons why people develop congestion? Like, is it what you put in your body that
Absolutely,
it's just too much for things to process in an efficient manner, or is there other things? Like, what are all the reasons?
Sugar
that we know of.
Sugar is probably one of the worst things for our body. We already know that sugar, if with cancer and stuff, is, limit your sugar intake and stuff like that. Well, they're supposed to, but again, getting into a deeper topic, sugars cause liver congestion because the liver has to break down sugars, has to break down proteins. When we already are subjected to chemicals and everything else, that has to filter through the liver as well. And so what's happened, everything will always start with the liver. The liver gets congested, and when the liver is congested, my prime way of putting this to people is, imagine like your liver is like the bathroom sink. We in the bathroom sink has that little hole at the top, right? So that if the stopper gets left down and the water's on, it fills up, it will spill over into that as a bypass. Well, the liver kind of works the same way. You keep dumping things into the sink, and as long as the stopper's open, it filters it out. But as it starts to get clogged up, or the sink gets clogged up and fills up with water, it spills out. But that little spillway doesn't go down to the drain. It goes back to your circulatory system. And so what happens is the liver, to survive, says, I'm busy, I'm full, I'm congested, I can't process another thing. And if you keep putting stuff in me, it has to go somewhere or you were going to kill me. And so what it does is it goes back to the blood and says, go somewhere else, find another place to go. Go try the kidneys, go try anywhere else, but I'm taking them. And so this excess sugars and these excess proteins, because we're protein rich people, because we're going to the gym and we're like protein, and the liver's so congested because then they're going to the bar every night too, drinking and doing bad things to themselves and eating fried foods and that. And so that sugar goes into the blood, which causes platelet aggregation. Platelet aggregation is like clumping. It's like getting clotting basically in the blood. Proteins in the blood are spicules. It's like little needles in the blood. And so you're congesting your blood, you're causing higher blood pressure, you're causing the sediment buildup, right? Well, now the sediment buildup is also getting excreted out through the plasma into the interstitial fluid. So now instead of this nice, clean, filtered interstitial fluid with this nice high oxygen levels and nutrients to go to the cells, we're already taking this waste product to our cells, number one, which it causes extreme fatigue in people and stuff like that. And we're limiting the amount of toxic load to take back out of the cell because we're already bringing toxic load in. So instead of getting a full wheelbarrow full, we're getting half a wheelbarrow back out of it. And then we're dumping that in the lymphatic system. And so these sugars and that and all this extra toxic load that we're putting into the system in the first place is congesting of the lymphatic system. Plus, on top of the fact that we absorb so much through our skin. And so think about all the different, hair products to makeups and all the different skincare products that we put on that are so high in toxic load, and you're absorbing that directly into the lymphatic capillaries at that point. And so it doesn't take a lot to congest it up.
Interesting. So obviously going maybe more organic, more natural products for your hair, skin, makeup, all of that can help. But it sounds like because our toxic load is so high, doing something like this type of therapy is even, almost necessary at this point.
It's necessary for everybody, unfortunately, because I live a healthy lifestyle. I mean, probably a little bit over the top at times, Kelly too, because of our journey. I haven't eaten at a restaurant in 3 years. We cook all of our own food, all organic, to the best of what we're provided, because even organic, we can't always promise that even organic is completely pesticide ridden. They say it is, but we have to rely on that. Yeah. But even though with reducing that load down, we still have to do these services and stuff for ourselves, because the second you step outside, you can't avoid all the things. If you go to the store or you go anywhere, they're still using chemicals to clean. They're still going to be, you walk into the bathroom anywhere at a store and all of a sudden the little thing sprays you in the face that's up on the wall to make it smell good. You're breathing that stuff in. If something has a fragrance to it, a synthetic fragrance, it is a chemical. And it's going in our sinus pathway directly into the head, down in the cervical nodes, down into the lymph, and so it's it's causing a lot of head congestion and cause brain congestion and everything else. I mean, so it's inevitable. We can't avoid it. And again, we travel more these days than we ever have. We go into more buildings than we ever have. We drive around more cars than we ever have. And so if you want to be a part of this as well, I guess you can get a house in Alaska or something, or we can go live in the plains of Montana somewhere out in nowhere, then we wouldn't need it. But and as long as we live in a city with millions of people and stuff, and inevitably we're going to have to start looking for these alternative sources of wellness. Otherwise we're going to be sick. We're just going to be sick. There's no chance. We don't have a chance out there anymore. It's, we have to adapt to our environment and not rely on our bodies to do it for us anymore.
Right. And it makes sense. I mean, there's technology out there. Why not use it to help you improve your health, as long as it's not hurting you and creating more toxins in your body?
Yeah. I mean, that's true. I mean, that's the thing, is we can either fight technology or utilize it to our advantage. Yeah. I mean, another topic to get into one day, get into about frequencies. That's a whole nother subject.
Yeah, I mean, we can have you back for that one.
We'll get into extracellular matrix. There's all kind of good things to talk about with that.
Good.
So, but yeah, I mean, it's, again, I tell anybody coming, and you get phone calls all the time. They're like, oh, I saw your place and you guys do this detox, and I just feel like I need to detox my body. Where do I start? First thing I tell anybody, start with drainage. Drainage is key. And then we go from there. Okay. Because again, if you don't drain, you can't detox. And I can show proof of that. Like I said, we started with the hockey because it was all about detox, and people, I'd say 70% of people came in and did great with the hockey and felt good. And we're like, this is wonderful. We feel better. 30% were rashing out and feeling horrible in that because they just didn't drain. So that's what, like I said, then we just started saying, you know what, everybody really could use the drainage first, and then we'll worry about detox later.
And how often does a person need to come in to have the lymphatic treatment?
Everybody's different. We're not all created equal. Unfortunately, it's, I mean, I have some people that come in weekly, because it's a work in progress. And then eventually they get to the point where they can go to maintenance, and maintenance could be once every 2 weeks, once a month, once every 6 months. Some people come in, I'd say if somebody had to have an answer, the average is you're going to do at least 3 sessions to clean the body up. First session is called my discovery session. It's a full body session where you're just learning the body. You're seeing where you're at, how much inflammation you have, how much congestion you have. You start to break things up, so we start to just take the hammer to the dam, and start to break the rocks down a little bit. Second session is to start sweeping up the rubble that we broke free a little bit on the first one. And the third session is that final little detailing, cleaning. And that's for the average person. And then some people, like I said, they do weekly. I have one lady that's been coming in weekly for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Okay. She's I call her my glass lady, because her whole body is so clear and clean. It's like working the wands over glass. Oh, because when you do the wands, they stick to congestion. Okay. So the wands are nice and smooth on the skin, but when you hit congestion, it's like hit the brakes and it sticks to it, and then you work it until it goes smooth, and that's when you can see it. You'll physically can see the fluids and that moving through the body. You'll see like the bubble in front of the wand just like pushing through, and people will feel it actually processing.
That's neat. Oh,
yeah, it's pretty wild. And like I said, I have yet to have a person do a full session and at the end not be amazed at what happened.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Well, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing this. It's fascinating. And next time I'm in Arizona, I'll have to come visit you guys and try it out.
Absolutely.
It's definitely sounds really interesting. And I can think of all the cases. Pretty much everyone needs something like this. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it was a pleasure to come on. I love the talk, as we couldn't tell, and share the knowledge.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much again. And thank you all for joining us today. Real quick, Larry, how can people reach you? I know Kelly mentioned last week, but how can people reach you again?
Well, our website is eastvalleydetox.com. And that has all of our services on there, of course, and stuff, and our phone numbers and that. So best is just call us. I love to be able to talk to people when we schedule as well. If anybody has any questions, they can call in. I'm more than happy to talk to anybody.
Okay, wonderful. And we'll have your website also in the show notes. So I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much. I know you're
absolutely
people as well.
Yeah.
And thank you all for joining us today. Have a great rest of your weekend. We'll see you again next week. Bye now.